Nigerians are calling on the police and other security services to unravel the circumstances that led to the brutal killing of a former presidential advisor, Ahmed Gulak, who was shot dead in Owerri, the Imo State capital. Arise political editor Somna Sambu profiles the late politicians and reactions to his death.
Until his killing on Sunday, Ahmed Gulak was a Nigerian lawyer, former Speaker of the Adamawa State House of Assembly, and former political advisor to ex-President Goodluck Jonathan. He was a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress after his defection from the People's Democratic Party in 2018. In 2014, he had picked a nomination form to run for governor of Adamawa State under the PDP, but failed to make progress at the party's primaries. Following the intractable crisis rocking the former ruling party, Gulak in January 2016 declared himself the new national chairman of the PDP, but he was cornered by party leaders and described as a jester. In 2018, Gulak and 16 other PDP leaders in Adamawa State defected to the governing All Progressives Congress. He was then made the chairman of the APC governorship primaries in Imo State prior to the 2019 general election. The assignment remained chaotic as he alleged a threat to his life for refusing to accept an alleged $2 million bribe from former Imo State Governor Rochas Okorocha, who had wanted his son-in-law Uche Nwosu to get the APC gubernatorial ticket at all costs. Gulak and his committee members would later leave Owerri hastily due to the alleged threats. The death of the former presidential advisor on Sunday in the same Owerri town, the Imo State capital, has now left many Nigerians in shock, with some linking his death to the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, or IPOB. But IPOB denies the killing, while describing it as a political assassination and calling on security agencies to investigate the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodimma, over Gulak's death. Some northern groups have also given a 2-week ultimatum to Governor Uzodimma to fish out the killers of the late Ahmed Gulak. The police in Imo State has confirmed the killing, while stating that Gulak left his hotel room to catch a flight without informing them or other security agencies, in view of the fragile security situation in the southeast and Imo in particular. The police describes the killers as armed bandits in a Toyota Sienna and accused the late Gulak's driver of using an irregular route to the Sam Mbakwe airport from where they were attacked. Meanwhile, the Southeast Caucus of the National Assembly has condemned the killings and attacks in the region, while urging the Inspector General of Police to investigate and unravel the mysterious unknown gunmen, unleashing violence on the people and federal institutions in the Southeast. Somna Sambu, Arise News.
All right, Tunu, your views on this sad, gruesome killing, another one.
It's a tragic passing. I know he was your colleague, so my condolences to you, Dr. Abati. But there's been a small update to Somna Sambo's great report there, which is that the police are now saying that his killers have been apprehended. There was a gun battle, and 6 of his killers and 4 of their associates have been killed by the police. But I'm sure you have a lot to say on this topic.
Well, the first point to make is that it's very frightening that political figures, persons of special interest, cannot move around Nigeria anymore, as had the situation in the last 24 hours, without being attacked. It's a very terrible, tragic signal that an Ahmed Gulak was killed at Obiangu village on his way to the airport in Owerri, in Imo State. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? Will a Yoruba man be killed on his way to the airport in Abuja? Would another Fulani person be killed on his or her way to another airport in any part of Nigeria? All of this would seem to indicate the severity of the security situation in Nigeria. And that's why we keep saying that the government of the day, having promised to ensure security in Nigeria, will have to do a lot more. 2 days ago or so, May 29th, was the 6th anniversary of the emergence of the Buhari administration. And at the state level, well, some governors we're celebrating either 4 years in office or 2 years in office or 8 years in office. I think it's very frightening that this is where we have found ourselves. Second, the role of the police in the assassination of Ahmed Gulak has to be, condemned. Because initially, the statement from the police was that, Gulak came to Imo State, he didn't inform any security agency on his way to the airport. They accused him of putting himself in a situation where he got killed. Whoever issued that statement is dumb, stupid. Such a statement should never have come from an institution whose duty is to ensure the security and welfare of everybody. They've tried to manage the situation in the last 24 hours. They've reported that they've been able to recover the vehicles, about 4 vehicles that were used to waylay Ahmed Gulak and to kill him. They've also said certain suspects have been arrested, and in the encounter with the suspects, they were able to kill some of them. Now, they've also tried to switch it to make it look like it was strayed from Adamawa State to Imo State before that tragedy occurred. All of this is still untidy. I think the police should be diligent in the investigations, and they should not jump to conclusions. We expect professionalism on the part of the police. This is not the first time we'll be having political assassinations in Nigeria. In the past, many of those assassinations were unresolved. We hope that this will not end up in that manner. Ahmed Gulak, yes, I worked with him. He was special advisor of political matters to President Jonathan. I announced his appointment. I also announced his disengagement. But, my memory of him is that he was a very committed man. He was very loyal. The reason he left the PDP was because of politics in Adamawa State. He having been speaker and also trying to advance his own political interests. He will be greatly missed because he's a man of great talent, very articulate, and very, a convinced guy, very courageous guy in pushing across his views on any matter at all. And a very genial, friendly fellow. We had a good relationship, and you can see that President Jonathan has issued a statement to say that, look, this was a very diligent, loyal, hardworking man in Nigerian politics.
Okay, Dr. Abati, thank you for your views too. Tunde, may his soul rest in peace. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rota today, Michael Wilson, Adiso Omoro, Aaron Akeji to give updates on Africa global business, COVID-19 and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Still Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. Ruth Zadiri will go straight to you now. Ruth, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Rufai. Good morning to you. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning to all our viewers. The African Business Update begins in Nigeria, of course, with the NNPC, the state oil company, stating that they will be deducting about 126 billion naira from what is their contribution towards the Federation account, Federal Accounts Allocation Committee, money which is shared by the 3 tiers of government. They stated this because of the rising costs of under recovery. And basically the increase in landing cost of fuel. Back in February, the NNPC suffered a 119 billion naira shortfall as a result of landing costs going from 184 naira to about 220 or 210 or so. So they're essentially applying pressure based on the realities on ground, based on what's going on with respect to the rising crude oil prices and what it is doing to their margins. So again, as Group Managing Director Mele Kyari has said several times, that the under recovery subsidy, whatever you want to call it, is no longer sustainable. Back in May, they said they wouldn't be remitting anything to the Federation account. In fact, going forward from here, from after June, they're going to be taking out 50 billion naira for joint venture maintenance. That is what the cost recovery for joint ventures agreements, production sharing contracts contracts that they have with oil and gas companies based on sustaining oil production in the country. So, that's yet another thing that the federal government and labor especially, has to keep in mind with respect to the impact this is going to have on what is going to be shared in the month of June. Remember, Timi Presilva, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, he put out a press statement about a week or two ago saying that there would be no fuel price increase in the month of June. So we are still where we are with respect to the rising cost of crude and what it's going to do to how it is impacting the margins of NNPC. And they've essentially now said that, hey, listen, this is the impact and this is the cut that you're going to see in fact allocation to the federation account. So that has serious ramifications with where we are now, impact on salaries and so on. Look, we've talked about this before. We've said that allow the subsidy to be removed and let the savings be transferred over to civil servant workers. It can't go through everybody, maybe from level 1 to 6 or 7. At least it will cushion them. It will trickle down and they will feel the impact. Labour, I don't know, they claim that they haven't talked to government since February or March. I think this will make them sit up. We'll see what happens. Still on the NNPC, Group Managing Director of the NNPC, Mele Kyari, spoke exclusively to Arise News, and he spoke about the Dangote refinery and the equity stake, the interest that the NNPC has in taking a 20% stake in the Dangote refinery. He spoke to Arise TV exclusively and said that, hey, look, talks are still in negotiation mode right now. He can't give too many details, but it is common practice for a state oil company, in order to expand its portfolio, to take an interest in private sector players in the refineries with respect to risk management and energy security. He also said, very importantly, that NNPC is also looking at taking an equity interest in any refinery that produces 50,000 barrels per day or more. So it's not just the Dangote refinery. So if you look at the plans that the NNPC has, from trying to cut costs from removing under recovery to expanding its energy portfolio and risk management, they're trying to trend on the production side of things on a higher trajectory with respect to the oil and gas sector. From there, we go to transportation costs, Transportation costs. The Bureau of Statistics released transportation fare for the month of April. We saw bus fare climb by about 72% year on year to about an average of 386 naira for intracity bus fare across the country. The higher states, Zamfara, Bauchi, and Zamfara and Bauchi were the top two states who had the highest amount of fare, 620 naira, 600 naira respectively. Also, motorcycle fare, that increased about 86.4% year on year. So transportation fares continue to increase as much as we talk about motorcycles being involved in crime and Lagos State particularly wanting to phase them out. It is still very notable that the Bureau of Statistics tracks the fares because it is still an economic reality that people use motorcycles for transportation. But by and large, if you look at where transportation fares are, transportation and food, those costs continue to rise in the country, and that's something that is going to impact on disposable income for the average Nigerian. Now, speaking of transportation, these vehicles, they get their spare parts from mostly from Ladipo in Mushi, and there was a big fire that occurred there over the weekend that destroyed a lot of property in Ladipo, which is in Mushi in Lagos State. A lot of vehicles spare parts are obtained from there. Insurance is something we need to keep. So that's pretty much our African update with respect to that fire that happened and how we need to expand insurance penetration in the country to save these businesses. And
it's true, Rotos, like you talked about insurance penetration. It's quite very low in this country. I think the threshold is less than about 5%. It is quite very low. So we should mandate a lot of people to go into, doing insurance for their business to be able to safeguard their business. But I want to talk about NNPC a little bit. I want to know the brain behind it. And it's something that if they're up for a debate, probably they could organize a debate and industry players could come debate this. I don't understand the idea behind saying, okay, we'll fix one refinery. We'll spend a lot of money on that refinery. That's 1.5 billion. And we'll still buy equity stake in other refineries. Okay, 20% in Dangote and some other refineries. I mean, what's the thinking behind that? If they were going to go this route by, co-owning refinery with other people out there, why not just stop the amount you are going to spend on that refinery, sell it off, then use that money to as well increase equity stake? And I also want to ask, should this be the way to go now as regards NNPC investing in refineries where the world is going off fossil fuels? And that's a conversation we should have critically. The world is going off fossil fuels. I'll have thought, I think it was Total recently that changed its name to Total Energies. So everybody's talking of going off fossil fuel. We're talking about, having net zero at some point. We're talking about possibility of, of oil glut in the world. And we're still investing in refineries. Is this a long-term investment? How long is it going to take us? So I'm quite very not sure, unclear about all of this. And it's a conversation I'd like to have.
Well, Rotus, thank you for bringing attention to that report by the MBS about cost of transportation. You might recall in the lengthy tripartite discussions to arrive at the national minimum wage, I kept hearing this phase of, the cost of living and standard of living in Lagos is different from Zamfara, but now we have cold, hard evidence that they even pay more for transport. So some of these assumptions that we leap to about other parts of Nigeria sometimes are quite false. And kudos to Lasima for saving the day with the spare parts fire. I shudder to imagine what would have happened if they were not that efficient.
Well, very quickly, the MBS Transport Fare Watch was also accompanied by, the prices of food items in April 2021. I don't know whether you saw that, but it wasn't as detailed as the Market Watch that was conducted by Nairametrics. Nairametrics is an online platform, because Nairametrics did a better job, in my view, of disaggregating it in terms of food items that the prices increased, food items that stayed on the same spot, food items that also had issues. But what is clear is that even with that marginal reduction in headline inflation, that has not been reflected in terms of the impact within the community, in terms of prices that people pay. And I think that is what is more important. When we were reviewing the GDP figures, we said, manufacturing increased, agriculture increased, and some people were celebrating that as a major achievement. But that cannot be an achievement except you go to the market and you buy palm oil, you buy rice, you buy gari, you buy, whatever, and you see it in terms of reflection. So Nigeria is still in the grips of stagflation. And that in itself is the big problem. And what is the government going to do about that to ensure that life is better for the people? If transportation fares are going up, if food prices are going up, it means hardship for the people. It means additional tax on the people. It means further erosion of the people's purchasing power. These are, clear signals, clear issues that government has to deal with. As for Dangote Refinery, I think it appears to me like a win-win for Dangote Refinery. Apart from NNPC seeking a 20% minority equity stake, we're told that 3 other firms, Western and Middle Eastern countries, also want to take equity stake in Dangote Refinery. 50 million barrels per day, capacity 650,000 barrels, within a specific range. Now, win-win for Dangote Refinery. But how about the NNPC? The NNPC itself has made the point that, look, we don't need to worry. They are going to do operational and maintenance operations with regard to the refineries. These are the key questions that we need to raise. Maybe there is no more time. I was going to ask you about the CBN adopting the NAFEX rate. But Aboki FX gets the rate at 3.93. Yeah. But now it is 500 naira to the dollar in the market. Now, great big devaluation. What is the CBN doing to make sure that the Aboki FX is not the one, or the BDCs are not the one benefiting from steps that the CBN has taken?
Right, Rotus, I think we need to run quickly, but we'll talk about all of that tomorrow. Thanks for your time. All right, moving on to business update with Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson joins from London now. Michael, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, shares in Asia Pacific's mixed actually this morning, reacting to the release of the Chinese official PMI index for May. Mainland Chinese stocks mixed. So that purchasing managers index in China came in at 51. It was going to be 51.1 according to estimates. So it's marginally off, but not a huge amount. The Nikkei in Japan slipped to 1.1%. Retail sales rose only 12% in April. Expected to be a lot more. It's quite a miss. It was going to be 15.3% according to market forecasts. Malaysia is heading into total lockdown. Benchmark fell, the index there fell about 1.5%. It's been struggling to contain COVID infections. Yesterday, 2,729 deaths yesterday, 565, over 500,000 cases. And so the benchmark index down, as I say, about 1.5%. And it's the most underperforming of all the Asia-Pacific markets this morning. As far as the US is concerned, is an interesting one. Now, they are on holiday, of course, this morning. US regulators seeing a bigger role in the crypto market. They're struggling to find who, amidst their various authorities, has the legal right to control the market. They're going to put what they call a regulatory perimeter around it. There is a crypto sprint team. Yeah, that's what it's called. Controller of the currency, the Fed Reserve, and the Fed Deposit Insurance Group. All those three bodies actually trying to work out who should be controlling it. As I said, then, a public holiday in the UK, also Memorial Day in the United States. However, big headlines around the world over the weekend. Joe Biden has told US intelligence to determine the origins of COVID, whether or not this lab leak theory is actually valid or not. It was, if you remember, it was dismissed as a conspiracy theory when Trump suggested it. That's all changed, and now Biden is under considerable political pressure to find answers to how that pandemic was released. And you can imagine that if it is proved, and it's going to be really difficult to do this, obviously, if it's proved to be a leak in Wuhan, that's going to pose a whole new political pressures on China, and will change the whole geopolitical political axis, and also therefore financial markets too. However, that's still to come. UN, the ex-governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, says companies should pay more for pollution that they actually generate. They say that's been set too low. They're well short of the estimated $80 to $100 per tonne, right, per tonne on carbon to keep us on track to net zero. Now, who actually, this is what these people never explore. What we don't hear is who is actually going to pay for this. All right, coming up, these headline figures. Germany, for example, right now, has a de facto tax of €25 per tonne of carbon on petrol and oil. And already activists in Germany are saying that the poor will suffer the most because they spend the most proportionately on heating and petrol and diesel and heating oil and gas. And it will push thousands of people into energy poverty. That'll be an interesting story to come. The EU, Andreas Schwab is the German MEP. They're wanting bigger concentration for tech regulation. This is arising now, so they're going to concentrate on the big ones, which is Google, Amazon, and the rest of them, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft. They're going to put a massive total of 100 billion market cap on the kind of companies going for. In other words, anything above that they're going to go for. And this will give real political problems to the EU, because obviously it's trying to build transatlantic ties with the United States. And surprise, surprise, these big companies are actually US companies, even though they may have presence in other economies. Here's a good one for you. Massive Bitcoin mine was discovered in the UK. The police thought that by the actual consumption of electricity, it was a cannabis farm. But no. Turned out to be a Bitcoin mine. Classic signs of a cannabis farm is a load of electricity being used. But the officers found a bank with 100 computers and no cannabis on the building. UK's biggest builder was warned of shortages in raw materials, industry-wide shortage, down to supply chain problems we've already talked about. It's going to push the cost of everything up. Once you start pushing building costs up, then everything else tends to rise. And finally, as far as the UK is concerned, figures this morning saying that exports worth billions of pounds have faced tariffs of trade since Brexit actually happened. So a big problem for exporters. There is a tariff-free deal agreed, but what they have to do is write down and actually apply it to exports there. So the week ahead then. So I said that America was closed today. It is for Memorial Day. However, the big one is the end of the week. The US jobs market report, 674,000 new jobs expected. That was a very disappointing payroll figure last month, just over 250,000. The big thing for investors is, do you do, as they always used to say in the city, sell in May and go away? June tends not to be a very good performing month for stocks. And yet this year, equities, as you know, have risen quite a lot. The problem is inflation problems, government turning off taps and so on, bubbling inflation worries. Is that going to cause people to sell stocks? But the real focus of the next couple of months is going to be on the Fed, on the US economy. Yeah. Is it heating up? June is not historically a strong month for stocks. That's the global view this morning.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for that insight. And it's a good thing you talked about the economy, because I'd just like to, double click on that economy issue. There's a report coming out of Wall Street Journal saying that Joe Biden is still keeping the tax break, the Trump-era tax breaks. So is that to placate the further increases in taxes they'll have to do soon to be able to pay for his big budget, $6 trillion? So is it to keep the tax break on? Or what's the tax regime going to be now? I want to understand that. And secondly, I want to talk a little bit about semiconductors and green energy. I'll ask this question again. How can America catch up with the semiconductor race? Because America is looking very strongly and saying, this is the first, I think if we catch up on the semiconductor race, then you can tip the balance between America and China and Taiwan and trade relations and things like that. What will be America's approach to catch up as regards to semiconductor race? But the first one will be on Joe Biden and the very nebulous tax regime, I should say now, that is happening in America.
So that's why you employ tax experts if you've got a nebulous tax regime. Yes, I mean, he will have faced pressure politically. I think you're absolutely right. Of course, it's a sop. It happens. Big companies, until we actually come to grips with inequality in society, which is never going to happen, I don't think. Not in our lifetimes anyway. Big companies employ very smart tax specialists to make sure that there may well be a headline figure of 15% minimum corporation tax, minimum figure 28% of tax on earnings from abroad and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, they're good headline, but the fact of the matter is, yes, of course, there are fringes around. I think Biden recognized that when he was trying to introduce this, and I'm pretty certain, I'm sort of guessing this, but I'm pretty well thinking that the lawmakers in the United States from either side of the House go through these arguments and say, that's the headline, but of course there are marginal benefits here, there and everywhere, and it's down to people to explore them. So yes, as far as semiconductors is concerned, well, so what do you do then with Taiwan? What do you do with South Korea? You get them on side, don't you? That's what the United States needs to do. Nobody wants to see China having an autonomy in that, because it's trying for an autonomy in lots of other things as well. So there will be political and economic debates. I think the United States will probably do quite well to create semiconductors. It's not the science that's a problem for them. It's where to actually create them. Is this going to be part of the infrastructure plan that Biden is introducing right now? You bet it will. So yes, I think you're going to see over the next few years quite a big change in the balance of that. How quickly it happens is down to the semiconductor industry and the one in the United States. They want it as quick as possible.
Well,
yes.
Michael, with regard to President Joe Biden's proposal of a $6 trillion budget, the issues I would like us to address will be, one, will it pass, considering the fact that there is the absence of the Hyde Amendment in that proposal. The Hyde Amendment is the one that says federal funds cannot be spent, to promote abortion. And you could imagine that maybe many Republicans and many Democrats will oppose it on that score. The other issue is that this is a budget that is proposing a deficit of about $1 trillion. Will it pass on that basis? And then the third point is about big government. If you have big government and the kind of spending that President Biden is proposing, would that not have an effect on inflation? And also probably compel, if it passes, the Fed to increase interest rates, which has been a major issue as part of the conversation. The second issue has to do with China. China over the weekend summoned the 5 big major oil importers. And China is trying to impose import quotas And yet China is the biggest consumer of, number 2 after the United States. But it's a major importer of crude oil from other parts of the world. What effect is this latest move by China likely to have on the global oil market?
As far as China's concerned, I still always feel somehow that they feel their way in diplomacy, particularly in economic diplomacy. They make these big gestures and all the rest of it. They have to come to terms. You're absolutely right. Of course, they are massive importers of the kind of stuff that they want to put. They want to put quotas on, and they want to affect relationship. They started badly with Australia, as we know. They've started badly with the EU, although the EU will probably, because it's composed of so many countries, get quite chummy with China. The United States will not, and the Kingdom, the United Kingdom will not. So I suspect there'll be a lot of argument about this still to come. As far as the United States is concerned, indeed, quite right to note that there are lots of conflicting things about this. Yes, I think 1 trillion is doable, but that's because there's a lot of cheap money around at the moment. As soon as that starts to tighten up, then you start, will people actually pay for US debt? I suspect they probably will. Yes, I think they will. So it won't be the debt that'll do it. It's the amount of infrastructure spending, and it's the encouragement of people to go and find jobs rather than sitting home on fat furlough and $1,400 checks that have gone into their back pockets. So there'll be a lot of discussion about it. I feel as though what will happen is the United States will probably emerge stronger and healthier for this, but it will be a big decision.
Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you for your time. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesuwa Morua joins us now. Adesuwa, great to have you.
Thank you so much, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor, and good morning, Tundu. Now, the total number of COVID-19 cases globally has surpassed 170 million, with more than 3.5 million deaths. And over 1.86 billion coronavirus vaccine shots have been administered, according to the latest data from the Johns Hopkins universities. China leads with over 620 million shots, followed by the United States of 293 million, and India with 207 million shots. Now, a lot of countries are looking forward to the month of June. I can tell you this because it is the month the U.S. President Joe Biden promised it would give 80 million vaccine doses to countries that are scrambling to vaccinate their people. So fingers crossed as we move into the month of June tomorrow. Here in Nigeria, 30 new cases were recorded in just 3 states. Lagos posted 26 of the 30 new infections. And at least 17 states in Nigeria have now commenced the second dose exercise of the first phase of inoculation against COVID-19, talking about vaccination updates. And over the weekend, more strategic leaders in the countries took their second jabs of the AstraZeneca vaccine, including President Muhammadu Buhari, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and of course the governor of Abia State, Governor Okezie Ikpeazu. Those strategic leaders are the latest to take their second dose. Again, we must highlight the importance of taking a second dose for better coverage against the virus. We are yet to see the governor of Lagos and his deputy take their jabs. However, the state on Friday commenced the second dose exercise. A press statement by the Commissioner of Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, yesterday revealed the exercise will end on the 9th of July. He also revealed that over 500 persons have returned from the 3 red list countries of India, Brazil, and Turkey since the implementation of the new guidelines by the federal government. He says there have been absconders, those who refuse to follow the mandatory quarantine rules, stating that further actions would be taken against them. Lagos, he says, accounts for 95% of inbound passengers into the country. So you can imagine what Lagos is having to deal with should we have absconders from these high-risk countries. Away from Nigeria to Vietnam, where the country is imposing new restrictions in its largest city of Ho Chi Minh in a bid to curb a new COVID-19 variant. The restrictions in the city are in place for 15 days starting Monday. People won't be allowed to leave their homes except when necessary, and gatherings have been limited to 10 or less. Now, the new variant detected in Vietnam is suspected to spread quicker than the previous strain. It's a hybrid of the Indian and the UK variant. Vietnam was initially a success story in battling the virus. In early May, it had recorded just 3,000 cases and 35 deaths. But since then, well, in the last few weeks, Vietnam has now confirmed 3,500 new cases and 12 deaths. That's almost the same number they recorded in a year. And then the World Health Organization is yet to make an assessment. They said they are monitoring the situation in Vietnam. However, let me remind you that the WHO has identified 4 variants of SARS-CoV-2, which is the COVID-19 of global concern. These include the variants that first emerged in India, Britain, South Africa, and Brazil. And now Vietnam has seen 2 of those variants as one, naming it a hybrid. In South Africa, the country is headed towards a 3rd wave, and President Cyril Ramaphosa says it is too early to say how severe and how long this wave will be. However, it's forcing the government to move to an adjusted level 2 lockdown instead of a level 1 lockdown. This level 2 adjusted lockdown will see new curfew hours from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the country, with bars and restaurants having to close by 10 p.m. Alcohol sales, very controversial, will be permitted this time around. Restrictions on gatherings and how many people may gather have also been adjusted. In his nationwide address, President Ramaphosa says the positive test rates in South Africa have more than doubled in the last month, from 4% to more than 11%. I think it's another reminder for countries such as Nigeria that are seeing very low cases at the moment that anything can still happen. And finally, this morning, tens of thousands of people have protested in Brazil, calling for the impeachment or resignation of President Bolsonaro for his handling of the pandemic. This is even as the parliamentary inquiry gets underway. However, President Bolsonaro is defiant. He continues to hold rallies for next year's elections. Now, the protesters blame him for downplaying the virus and taking too long for starting inoculation. Brazil has the 2nd largest COVID-19 deaths in the world and the 3rd largest infections.
Wow.
Tundu, please go ahead. Tundu.
Thank you, Adeswa. This protracted nightmare continues, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, I'm so alarmed by South Africa. I really had thought that they would skip this 3rd wave entirely because they had been doing really well with their vaccine rollout. But alas, regarding Vietnam, hybrid variants, I mean, those are scary words indeed, and I hope that we do not get that here. I don't understand why people abscond. Just give your details and just be in isolation, as is required of everybody, because all the lives that have been lost and all the fortunes that have been destroyed as a result of this disease could have been avoided entirely. About Jair Bolsonaro, I completely support the protests in Brazil. He was completely reckless, but it reminds me of a report that I was reading about India and how they're having record arrests because of people committing evils like selling fire extinguishers to those who are desperate for oxygen tanks and selling fake drugs, profiting off people's pain and treating their neighbor in that kind of fashion. But then I think the buck ultimately stops at the desk of Modi, same as it does with Jair Bolsonaro. It's the leadership that's responsible for the deaths that are going on in those countries, and it's tragic.
Indeed.
Well, first, let's start with South Africa. Yes, South Africa is just being cautious. That broadcast yesterday by President Ramaphosa is just to put the country on alert, and the adjustments, I think, are in order, and that the government of South Africa has taken a wise decision. In 4 states of the country, if I can use that phrase, the Free State, the Northwest, the Northern State, and in Gauteng, the statistical threshold have been crossed in the last 1 month, from about 4% to about 11% in terms of positivity rate.
Yes.
And what the government has done is to quickly apply the brakes. Now, it's not only South Africa that has taken that step in the last week. Kenya also, has extended its lockdown, the new lockdown that Kenya introduced, for another 60 days. So we find all of these African countries trying to take steps to prevent, to mitigate the effect of a possible 3rd wave in some of those countries. Now, if you look at the figures, 1.3 billion vaccine doses have been administered so far globally. Only 1%.
1.8.
Yeah, only about 1% in Africa. That means that Africa is far behind in this immunization race. And that's why I think Nigeria should look at what is going on in other countries in Africa, steps being taken by other African leaders, and to see what possible lessons we can learn from that. As for Vietnam, yes, we've been told that it is in the nature of viruses to mutate. But the fear about what the health minister Tan Yong Jung of Vietnam has reported, is that this is a hybrid variant.
Yes.
Now, this hybrid variant is, according to the minister, very dangerous because it is transmissible by air. So it's a combination of the Kent variant, the B1.617 variant, 0.17 variant, and also the Indian variant, the B.1.617 variant. I think the challenge here is that science has to continue to stay ahead of this virus that is threatening humanity. The variants that have been recorded since this global tragedy started, there are over 1,000.
Yes.
But the ones that have been isolated are the ones that are of major threats to human existence. So we just must know that the virus will continue to mutate, but the world at the moment is relying on science. Despite the fact that in a place like Brazil, you have Jair Bolsonaro, who is a vaccine skeptic, a pandemic skeptic, and he's been very consistent in calling the pandemic, the virus, a flu.
Yes.
He's been proven wrong many times, but he has said, oh, gatherings are important and that, the non-pharmaceutical gestures should not be observed. He doesn't believe in social distancing. Now, in 16 cities of Brazil, there is rebellion.
Yeah.
In parliament, there is rebellion. I think what is required is the kind of inquiry that we witnessed recently in the UK. There should be an inquiry. There should be an investigation. And Jair Bolsonaro should be reminded of the fate of Collor de Mello, the president of Brazil, 1990 to 1992, after the military rule in Brazil. Brazilians went onto the streets. They were carrying coffins on their head. Well, Collor de Mello is still there. He ran for mayor after being president. He went to Senate and all of that. So the people's voice matters in this issue, and leadership is all that is required, as we have seen in different parts of the world.
I mean, very well said, both of you. I just want to, piggyback on Tundu's point about people selling fire extinguishers. I pray, I don't know what to say. I pray God will forgive them, because a fire extinguisher is supposed to help you cut out oxygen from the fire. And because people are desperate, they need oxygen, you sell them something that will cut out their oxygen levels from them. That's the height of wickedness I've ever seen. And all of this boils down to lack of leadership. And it goes back. And that's why it is this lack of leadership and lack of administration that gives an ecosystem for the rise of corruption and wicked tendencies. If Narendra Modi had done what was right initially, all of this will not happen. Thanks so much for your time. This one, really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.